All right, so when we open Adobe Animate, as with any other software, you have options for your document setup. All right, so I have my recent files here. HTML5, WebGL, ActionScript 3.0, Air for desktop, Android, and iOS. So you can actually use this program to make apps, and hopefully by the time next marking period comes along, I will have that all finalized so that we can at least test on like an Android device or an iPhone. There's this whole process you have to go through to get a developer certificate. That way you could actually upload apps that you make to like the Google Play Store or iTunes or something like that, which I think is pretty exciting because there's a lot of money to be made in apps and things like that, and having the software to create that without a lot of coding would be a huge advantage for us, right? So HTML5, what do we think that might be used for?
Video?
Not video. What's HTML refer to or have to do with? Website, right? So it's going to code it for to be compatible with that. For most of what we're going to do, we're going to use ActionScript 3.0. All right, so this is really the language here that we're going to be using, which actually, I should have put that in here also. All right, so I added that into there, and I'm gonna, instead of just filling it out for you, we will type it in as we go. All right, so I'll put that stuff over here too. So I'm going to go back and forth between these different documents. All right, and I'll fill in the definitions on here, and then you guys can type them in on your worksheet. So ActionScript 3.0 is the language used, and what I've read and kind of seen is that it's going to allow for the most functionality in your animation. All right, so we don't want to limit ourselves and not being able to perform certain functions. So we're going to say the most functionality of documents, right? All right, so we have created that document. I'm trying to find the place to put this that it's not going to be in the way. So you guys are going to type this into the worksheet, right? Or actually, yeah, I heard Mikey say that. You're absolutely right. So to edit it, right, you want to go to File and make a copy. All right, and then you can edit it. And I think we'll talk about sharing later, all right? Let's keep it simple here. All right, so we set up our document, all right? Now, the first thing we're going to do is talk about some of the drawing modes, all right? Or actually, before we do that, what do we see that's similar to other softwares that we've used before in this program? Properties bar, all right, good. And so what do we know about that? And this would technically be called a panel. What do we see in the properties panel? It might be like a duh thing. Is that a self-explanatory word? We see characteristics of the different tools selected, right? So of the tool, or actually I should say the object selected. Is this green an okay color? Should I change it? Everybody can see that? So I can go in here, and if I wanted to change the color of my text here, I could do something like that. Let's see if that works. All right. So in my properties panel, I can change color of this stuff. So I'll keep editing this so that we can have some contrast there. All right, so there's nothing else really to select in there, so I wouldn't have anything else be changeable. What else do we see? What do we call this thing over here? Toolbar, right? So there's a lot of similar tools that we've used in Photoshop. You have your selection tool. We're going to talk about this free transform tool today. The lasso tool, what's that do? It's a way of selection, right? You can draw around something to select it. Here's your pen tool for making specific paths. I think tomorrow we're going to try to create what's called a motion path. So you can make an object move along a specified line. This is your type tool, so we use that for text. Your line, rectangle, oval, polystar, all shapes. So these are all of your drawing tools down through here. Paintbrush, brush tool. The bone tool, that's actually something that's very unique to this. Anybody know what that's going to be used for, Cameron? What type of tweening, more specifically? Right, so when you have a character, you'd have a head and a torso and arms. The bone tool is really the skeleton underneath those shapes that kind of joins them. So when you animate one part, it's going to be connected to the others. So that's a pretty cool tool that can be used in here. Paint bucket's going to fill. Eyedropper samples colors. The eraser would erase. I've never used this width tool, and I haven't used the camera tool yet, but I'm looking forward to using that so that we can zoom in on certain sections when you're doing your animation. The hand tool would pan around. The zoom obviously makes it larger or smaller. And then you have your colors down here. So stroke color should be, why is stroke color saying there twice? I'm not sure about that. Fill color, and that's twice also. So a lot of similarity to Photoshop, right, in our toolbar. And that's why I like to start with Photoshop, so that when you come in here, you have a lot of familiarity. All right, and then you do have some other palettes here, your color palette, your swatches, alignment information, transforming, motion presets, and the Creative Cloud library. All right, so we'll have to look at some of those as we go. All right, up on the top here, you do have some options here. This clapboard is the scene editor. Think of scenes in Animate as being different pages. All right, so yeah, I'm not going to add that to that. All right, as we go to test, so if you had one scene linking to another one, you know, you can kind of set up different artboards. You have a symbol editor, centering, and clip content. So that'd be some kind of cropping with that. All right, so that's an explanation of that. What's this thing down here called? The timeline, right? So that's how we see where things are in time. All right, the next thing that we'll talk about, this other panel, which are there a lot? Yeah, there are a bunch of other panels. We're probably not going to use a lot of those, is your library. All right, this is, what is a library in a digital type of context? Not, kind of folders, but not really layers. The library stores reusable objects, all right? So you don't have to keep importing things over and over again. All right, so today what we're going to do, which, how many people downloaded those files? Yeah? Why'd that turn? There we go. All right. All right, well, we'll draw first, and if you're waiting at some point, I will remind you that I did want you to click on these objects here, right? So this would be the bird. You'd click on there and download it that we're going to be using. And then, how do I go back? There we go. And then for our sound, all right, you do the same thing. Just download it from there. All right, so those are things we're going to be using instead of having you guys search around for stuff and losing time on there. All right, so we're going to start by looking at our drawing modes. All right, So what we're going to do is go, and actually we didn't save this really yet, right? So let's do save as, even though we haven't really added anything yet. Let's call this animate demo. Actually, we should put your name in front of there, right? And I'm going to call this AM. And for me, I have a demo lesson folder. And then I'm going to make a new one for animate. All right, so you have drawing modes. All right, so if we click on the rectangle over here, your properties panel changes because we have a new tool selected. And what I want you to, so on the top here is your stroke color and your fill color. So let's find a, let's change our fill color to a green. And let's make the stroke none. All right, so see right up here where my cursor is, you have that box with the line through it. That's going to apply no fill. Now you can change that afterwards, but I always like to try to save time. So I'm going to turn that to no fill, or no stroke, I'm sorry. And I always have to remind myself of this. So watch what I'm going to do here the first time, all right? And I'm going to explain this drawing mode. Actually, that is the right one. So if I were to have this drawing mode where it says it's on, right? So this box right here, and you can see that the background of that is kind of grayed out. With the drawing mode on, all right, it makes this an object, as opposed to if I were to turn this off and then draw it and select it. Notice how you have all those little dots in it? Yeah. So it's kind of like a rasterized object as opposed to a smart object. And what happens too, actually, so you know, with the clouds, we'll talk about that, and I'll kind of explain the benefit of that. All right. So I'd like you to have your rectangle created as a with the object mode on. All right. You can change it if it was if it was off. All right. Or doing the reverse. So if I wanted to turn it into the other one, I could just go to modify and break apart, or vice versa if I had it with the drawing mode. And again, actually, so drawing mode on makes it uneditable. So we'll say when it's on, it's uneditable. When it's off, it is editable, right? And we'll see how it's kind of you can combine it with other things by doing that. All right, so we have our kind of grass here that we're going to call this, and I can, as I said, I can convert it to a graphic, as it's called, and now it's solid. If you want to resize it, now we're getting into some of our toolbar items. The third one from the top is our free transform. Now I don't know why Animate does both sides at a time. I feel like it's kind of annoying, but there's got to be some kind of reason for it. So I'm going to just kind of match the width of here, and I'm going to make it a little bit smaller, maybe make it a third, because I think I want the sky to be a little bit larger than that. All right, so we have this all on this layer. All right, as we're developing things, we're probably going to add stuff, so or layers. So I'm going to rename this layer, all right, by just double clicking on it, and I'm going to call this background. Yep. So what if I move it over here?
No, move it in the bottom right corner, for example. And now pull from the top left.
Okay, yeah, yes, because that's like your pivot point usually, or the, I don't know what they call that. All right. I never thought about moving that to there. Good call, Kayla. All right, so everybody have their kind of ground plane created there? All right, next we're going to create a sky. So we're going to choose our rectangle again, and drawing mode is on. This time though, we're going to change it to a gradient. So in your fill option, we're going to go down to gradient, and we're going to start just by drawing the shape. And then if we select it and go on to, is it swatches? No, I think it's color picker. There we go. So I selected it, and then in this kind of shortcut palette, I'm clicking on this paint kind of swatch looking thing called color. All right, and from there I can choose my colors to make up my sky. So I'm going to choose something like that. I'm going to go like a blue to a white. All right, and then I can use my transform tool, because I don't think you can change the angle of the gradient. So I'm going to just kind of do it this way. Yep. All right, I'll be right there. One advantage though of this drawing mode off, I kind of forgot about. If you hover over the edge of this, where'd it go? Oh, now I can't do it? It's going to make me a liar here. I don't know if it's in the initial creation then. So when you draw, if you hover over the edge, you get this curved line, and you can actually go in there and make some kind of curved shapes to it. Now let's see if we go off it and then back on it. Huh. Yeah.
My thing's like,
Sticking out of the border.
If it's extending over the edge, that's fine. When we export it out, it'll kind of crop to that edge.
And where do I go to like turn on drawing mode or whatever?
So when you initially create your shape, right up here in your properties panel.
Right. And what is turning them on and off there?
So you can see the appearance. On this one, it doesn't have all those dots, and you really can't really edit it. But where we have this one, I don't know, you see all the little dotted pattern in there?
Yeah.
So now we can go in there, and that's what we're going to get into the clouds next. It'll combine shapes a lot quicker. All right. Also, actually, I guess with this one we could use the direct selection. Is that going to affect that there? Yeah. So your direct selection, just like in any other program, gives you the ability to modify those points. So if I wanted to go in here and really kind of make some kind of irregular or organic shape, I can really modify that and do something kind of crazy with that. I'm assuming you can probably add points. It's been a little while since I've drawn with this, but all right, we're not going to kind of go crazy with that. All right, so let's go next. So, and Justin, these were our definitions over here, right? That explaining those drawing modes. So, there we go. So with the drawing mode on, the object is uneditable. When it's off, it is. And it also combines shapes. So that's what we're going to see next when we're doing our clouds. All right. So let's make a new layer, because I want these clouds to be independent, and that's going to be important when we're animating. So on the bottom left of your screen or your workspace, all right, right down here, we have the little new layer icon. We're going to click that, and let's call this clouds. All right, a cloud is, some simple clouds. We can use the oval tool. All right, and I'm going to change my fill color to like a white. All right, and I'm going to start with the drawing mode off. All right, so I can make this shape. And then if I make one over it and then go to select, look at what it did. It combined it into one automatically. So with the drawing mode off, when I create shapes overlapping, it automatically combines them into one. All right, so that's kind of an advantage of this. So make a cloud by combining like 3 or more ovals. Now, and actually, I'll talk about that next. So everybody okay with making a cloud? Something like that? Tina?
How'd you get
The drawing mode or the layer?
the dots on the cloud?
So that was when we select the oval, you want to have the drawing mode off up here. Remember when we did the rectangle, it was on? So with it being off, then it has these like dots, and it's kind of like a rasterized look, I feel like. All right, so now we're going to start to animate. Exciting, right? So let's move our cloud over here. Actually, you know what? Want to make it into a symbol. All right, so yeah, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to convert it to what's called a symbol. All right, because right now it can't be animated. Now, so we're going to go to modify and then convert to symbol. Let's call it cloud. And we have 3 types of symbols. A graphic is just a piece of art, right? It can't really be editable or animated. A movie clip is what can be animated. So that's very important to create this item as a movie clip. And now you can see those dots go away, and it can now be animated. Also, if we look at our library, we have this object here created, all right? So let's see here. Convert to symbols. We do that. So it's going to be under the modify pull down. So if you ever want to convert something, it's in the modify pull down, and I believe the keyboard shortcut is F8. So if you like using keyboard shortcuts, that would be the way to get to that. All right, let's see if I can make this box a little bit bigger. There we go. All right, so Chin Chin, we just we made the clouds by using an oval tool, and we turned that drawing mode off so that we had the dotted kind of look to it. All right, so we have how we do it. So the graphics is the first type, and that's just artwork, basically, right? Or maybe we should even say editable artwork. And then we said that what was that type that we just turned this to be animated? What type of symbol? Thank you. All right. So object which can be animated. Now, if you ever wanted to turn this back into editable artwork, you could go to modify and break apart. So actually, I'm going to make a copy of this just so I don't lose the other one, and I'll paste it. All right, so if I went to modify and break apart, now it turns it back to the dots. Another way to do that, and actually, so the break apart turns a symbol back into graphic. Okay, so now we have these clouds. All right, and I'm going to get rid of this shape here because I'm not using that. Now we're ready to animate. So actually, let's make, and also the other thing I wanted to say, Danny found this out. If you double click on an object, look at what happens up here. This is another way to edit. So now we're seeing this kind of hierarchy of kind of getting into a sub object. So it's showing us that this cloud is in scene 1. All right, if we go back, now it's not editable because it's now kind of on this upper layer. So if you ever have your screen kind of gray out, that's because you probably double clicked it and you're just going to go back. You returning to us?
No.
How can I make this so that I can't move this accidentally? No, that would still move it. What will we do in Photoshop to the layer? Lock it. So we can do the same thing down here. On our layer, if we click the dot underneath the lock symbol, now I can't move that accidentally. If I wanted to hide it, what do you think I would do? Hit the dot under the eyeball, right? So a lot of similarity again with Photoshop, all right? And we're kind of explaining things as we're going here and as we need them. All right, so now we want to animate this cloud. So what we'll do is there's a couple ways. You can right click and create motion tween. You can go to modify. No, I thought it was up there. That's probably the easiest way. So if we right click this and say create motion tween, what you see is that our timeline, it created 24, it filled it in so that the cloud is going to be there the whole time. Now what happened to my background?
It's gone.
Why did it disappear?
Because it's not farther out. Like the duration.
Yeah, the duration, good. So what we're going to do, and this is kind of similar to Photoshop, but we don't have a diamond, we have a black dot. So a black dot is always going to indicate a keyframe. So what we can do is go to our background layer and go to the same frame, 24. Now we right click and we can say insert frame. All right, so that filled that in for the whole way. Mike?
This one converts like symbols between and makes new layers. Okay.
All right, so by having this line curve where we're looping it, but
How'd you do that?
You already did it.
so I hover over this path here and your cursor changes to a curved line, and you can do that. And you can kind of move it over. So now if we wanted to test this in like a preview window, we press Control Enter. All right, and now this is what your animation will look like with that, so that's why I'm saying if it's off the screen to start and then on or off to finish, we get that kind of looping type of thing happening. Now, some people were asking about slowing it down. How could we slow down our animation? Think about your frame rate and something to do with that. Right now it's showing 24 frames in 1 second. So if we want to slow it down, we're going to add frames so what we can do is left click our frame and we can does this work? We can drag it out to 2 and do the same thing here. Or just left click and move it over. Now if I do a Control Enter, it's moving slower. Now, let's see, I think it would look better with an additional cloud. Let's see if we can do this easily. Control C, Control V. Nope. All right, maybe this is where our library comes in.
Stop. How? It's not there. Look at that.
All right, I'm not going to talk about that too much. That's not working the way I want it to. All right, so the last thing I want to so next will be the bird, all right? So now, as I said, we're going to import to the library so that we can reuse this thing over and over again. Now, is this my PNG file? I took the time and I made it into a PNG so you guys wouldn't have to remove the background. So here's my PNG file. So now it's in the library. I can drag it. And actually, we said, I suggested you make a new layer for it. And now we have our layer. All right, so yes, it is very large to start.
He is
but we can use our transform option, shrink them down. All right, and maybe we'll have him kind of going the other way.
It's a big bird.
Go big or go home.
Yeah, right?
All right, so how can we, what do we do to animate the bird? Right click him, gray motion tween, all right. So this pops up, we're gonna do that. And then, so now I can just click in a frame and move them here. You can also rotate them as you go, which I think kind of looks a little better. Kind of as the bird kind of teeters back and forth. So pick like a couple frames there. So we can rotate. You could even make it larger and smaller as you do that, which kind of looks, I don't know how that's going to look actually, but it's just to show you the amount of things you can do. All right, and now if we play this, let's see how our bird flies. So he's rotating, he's getting bigger and smaller. It's like he's following the cloud, which I don't really like, but looks weird kind of. So this is just skill building. All right, it's not going to be the most like amazing creation, but we're learning here, right? So I'm going to pause this. So that's our bird. And so we have two more things to do. We're going to have text fade in, and then we're also going to add sound. So that, well, I'll make one more layer for our text. All right, I'm going to go ahead now, and on this layer, I'm going to use my text tool. I'll click and drag to define a box. I'm going to put my name in here. So you have all your property options here. We can center it. We can choose a nice font, which they give you a screen preview. So find like a nice decorative font. Let's try to stay away from Times New Roman or Comic Sans.
How dare you?
Choose a nice contrasting color. So let's see, blue, green. I'm going to use a purple. What kind of color scheme am I creating here? Blue, green, purple. I need my cricket sound. All right, so we have our text. All right. Now, why don't you guys watch this as I do this the first time? If you haven't gotten your bird done, put that on pause, and then we can come back to that if you need help. All right, so for our text, if we wanted to create a motion tween, we should be able to do that there. So it converted into a symbol. Now for this, what we're going to do is we're going to go, where is it here?
Not making like the thing big enough. Whoopsie. Stop.
Where's the characteristic I want here? It's, or do I have to break this apart?
How did you get it that big? Because
So when you highlight it, right here, size.
well, no, like the box, because
I clicked and dragged. So I just went like this, Mike. I used the text tool and then I click and drag.
for like
Oh, you know what though? It changes. It's all dependent upon what's inside of it. So you have to make your text size larger to do that. Now, all right. So here we go. All right. So here's what we have to do for our text. So in this case, it's going to be a graphic. So instead of it being a a movie clip. All right, we're going to make it a graphic. And then in our style, we can change alpha. All right, so I'm going to say it's 0% there. And then in this one, let's see, if I go to 100, I feel like, no, that didn't work. Well, at least watch me do it, because there's a couple steps here, but it's not overly complicated, I don't think. So what I found is that the text has to be converted into artwork to be faded in. All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to say modify, and then I guess I already did it. You have to break it apart numerous times. So let me just start over here then with that. So first I create my text. Why am I not drawing? All right, so new layer, text. All right, now I'm going to grab my text tool. I'm going to draw a box. I'm going to type in my name. All right, I'll put it where I want it to be. So now, in order to this to have this effect applied, we're going to say modify, break apart. So that turns it into individual letters. We're going to break it apart. Now it's a graphic. All right. At this point, now we can create our motion tween. And when you click on it again, we have this area in our color effect over here, our properties, which we can change to alpha. So it's going to start at 0, and then in our last frame, it's going to go, and you have to keep reselecting or it grays out, and we're going to go to 100. So now we have our text fading in. So you have to break it apart twice, and then you create your motion tween, and for some reason, once you do that, it deselects it. So you just have to reselect it on your stage. And that's what this is called in Animate. Your whole workspace or your document area is called the stage.
What's the color effect?
In the color effect area, it's called, you change the style to alpha. And so it's going to start at 0, and then in your last frame, it's going to be 100. Yes. So the last thing is going to be the audio. So what we're going to do is we're going to import that again to the library. So we have our bird wave file. And we could put it right on a layer, but I like to have a separate layer for our audio. All right, and then all you're going to do is you're going to drag this audio file to your stage. And you'll see that you have an orange line in there that shows kind of a waveform of that.
My audio file just didn't show up.
What, it didn't show up in your library? So if we do Control Enter at this point, we have it applying there. All right, so the audio, we imported it, dragged it just onto the stage, and you should see that indication there. All right, at that point, we're ready to export this. So the FLA file is your editable file, right? And the SWF is going to be your rendered file. Kind of like your PSD and your JPEG, right? Yeah.
It's not showing up when I dragged it to the canvas.
All right, let me finish up and we'll come back and double back here. So the last point here, so we're saying that the FLA is your editable file, your SWF is your rendered file. I'm kind of talking as I'm making my thing there. So rendered. So what we're going to do to create that, so right now you can see right up here, at the end we have FLA. I'm going to save it, and then that asterisk goes away. And now to publish this, or to make our SWF, we're going to say File, Publish. And, oh, actually, I guess I got to go Publish Settings first. So we're going to go into here, and right now you can see it's a flash. That's checked off. I'm going to turn off these other things. All right. And we have our quality and stuff here. And let's see, we should be able to tell it where we're going to save it. No, where is that? Probably making a million files here. Oh, here we go, duh. So output name, this is where we're telling it where it's going. So if we click on the folder, we can then assign where it's going. Ooh, I'm thinking we might have some issues with Twitter today. As far as, I don't know if it's going to take a SWF file. So do we have other options in here? We could make a GIF out of it also. Let's do that also. And then we publish. So let's test and see what we got here. Actually, that's right. We can do as render as video too, right? So other than publishing, we can export and movie. We'll cover all of our bases. That's a JPEG sequence. We don't want that. Well, if we go to video, now we can get, oh, that's an MOV file. All right, so we'll have to experiment with Twitter and see what works the best. But what I should be able to do is go to my folder. Oh, and then it brings it to Media Encoder. That's right. So we just play it from there. Well, so that's our MP4. So if you do it as a video, it's going to take us through Media Encoder. Yeah, I made a GIF also. Oh, that doesn't look good. My quality must have been horrible on that. We have an HTML file. We have a MOV. Can't play that. Testing out format. I mean, that's a pretty small file size. So that's probably going to work out the best. We could probably upload that directly to Twitter. So I think the optimal way here is going to go to File, Export, Video. All right. So it's going to say, as we see here, it's going to say Convert Video in Adobe Media Encoder. So we're going to say Export. And when we do that, it opens up into this little program called Adobe Media Encoder. All right. And by that, we can use our H.264 setting to make our MP4.